The book is called, they called him Roos, Pro Newcomer and the Making of a Burundian Revolutionary. And it basically chronicles the legacy that Paulu's activism left in Bermuda and across the world, because he was a global figure as well. He was born here to us, he is a gift to us, and he worked for us here. But the scope of his work encompassed the entire globe. So my intention with writing this book is to cast a light on and provide a brief overview of a life that was lived on the rock and in the four corners.
What motivated you to write They Called Him Roos?
Well, a few things. One, I never heard this man's name in all of my years of education here in Bermuda. He never showed up in any of the school texts. Nobody whispered of him in the halls. Nothing, knew nothing. Also, when I finished university, when I finished high school, I had the opportunity to sit with him, because there were some brothers who were saying, listen, you have to come see this older guy, you have to come sit with him, you have to come sit with him, and bring a notepad and paper, because they knew that I was always the writer. I was always telling stories, writing stories down, and recording history. So they knew if they had me seated next to this guy and he started talking, then Junior would pick up the pen. Well, I had the opportunity to do that sometime in the 90s. Sat at his house, didn't bring a pen or paper. And you know, he was just talking, he was friendly, jovial, humble, just a beautiful elder. And that was, in retrospect, that was an opportunity that I guess went begging. He transitioned in 2007, and I really felt that, because I realized that I had an opportunity to at least have begun to chronicle the story directly from him, and I lost it. So part of this book is, for me, writing what I feel, R-I-G-H-T-I-N-G, what I feel is a wrong committed by me, a failure to have started writing when he was still alive. So this is my homage to the man, to the memory of the man, to the spirit of the man, and it's also my commitment to ensure that his story is told in an age-appropriate way for kids who are in school now, in high school now.
After researching, interviewing, and writing They Called Him Roos, what were some of the qualities that make Pro Newcomer an interesting subject?
Interesting is an understatement. The man is fire incarnate, very much driven by the force of his convictions, not one to suffer fools gladly. And he was always, as one of his family members said, he's always about principle. And sometimes his stand would be littered with colorful language, but his position was always solid and sound. I loved the way that he was very much a scholar, a genius, I would say, without any effort at some hyperbolic embellishment. I mean that he was a genius, a brilliant scholar, but he was very accessible to the people. So it's no surprise, for example, that elders, people of his age group, revered him, honored him, and sought to protect him when the white racist oligarchy here in the island was trying its darndest, its level best to really crush him underfoot. So I just find it's almost larger than life. I mean, his escape from the FBI escort that was in charge of security as he left, I think it was Fiji, and was being transported to the United States. He escaped in the airport. You know, stuff that's ripped out of a James Bond novel, right? And this again is a man that I had the opportunity to sit with. This is a man who was born and ran the streets just as I ran the streets here in Bermuda, and he's doing things like this, all for the benefit of, as Frantz Fanon would say, the wretched of the earth. Right? So he did this because he wanted to see a better world, and he knew he had the skill set to be able to achieve that aim. So I find it absolutely fascinating that somebody from this little dot in the ocean is able to inspire Nelson Mandela, be honored and respected by Malcolm X, be honored by Kwame Nkrumah. All of these folk who were giants among revolutionary giants of the 20th century, they tipped their hat to this onion, this son of the soil, this back of town. You know, they hailed him up. So yeah.
Having been through the journey of writing They Called Him Bruce, what is the overall message?
That we who are born here are capable of world-changing things. I think for me that is a key message. We don't have to reinvent any wheels. We don't have to try to walk as others have walked. We can actually determine the path that we take, and we have to have, I guess one would say, the courage to believe in our own potential and the audacity to pursue what we know we are capable of. Paulu, his life story embodies that. You know, it absolutely embodies that. And I think because he is one of ours, and because he is so accessible to brothers on the corner, for example, when I was up at the prison just yesterday, sharing the story of Paulu, these guys were like, why didn't I know this when I was, in high school? And they were angry, and rightfully so, because these are the sorts of stories that let you know who you can be and what you can become. Because he struggled academically. A lot of young brothers can align with that. Yeah, I struggled when I was a youth. I was teased and all that. So was he. He was in the so-called slow class. Yeah, and he still did these things, and he's from here. So history is also a mirror. So I can see myself writ large in the recounting of the history of the life of Paulu Kumar Kafego. And that's what I want to see young people really gravitate to. Or actually any Bermudian. I want to see that. Yeah.
You've written books on Sally Bassett, Dame Lewis Brown Evans, and Marcus Garvey. The journey of our island is vast, yet oftentimes key figures were not traditionally included in the larger narrative. How important is it that we create a culture that tells all of the stories and not just some?
There's a proverb that simply says, only when lions have historians will hunters cease being heroes. Right? I think what we have inherited, and it's one of the shackles around our minds, is a colonial miseducation that seeks to erase the history or spin it in such a way that seems to legitimize the status quo as it stands. Well, the telling of the stories of people like Sally Bassett, of people like Marcus Garvey, of people like Dame Lois, disturbs the water. They offer a dissenting perspective to what we have been spoon-fed is the actual story of Bermuda. So I think it's important that when we're telling these stories, we tell them so that young people can have as many opportunities to see the fuller picture, rather than just the half-truths and lies, outright lies, of the hunters, to go back to the proverb. Right? So I think of myself as one who writes the stories of lions.
This being your fourth publication, do you have any advice for upcoming writers and authors? Know who your target is, and write as if no one's looking. This is very much a labor of love. And my thing was always, why am I committing these words to the page? As writers, I think we have to know why we're doing it. We're not going to get rich. We're not like Stephen King writers. We're not making necessarily scripts for Miramax or some Hollywood bigwig. Oh, for me at least, I'm writing stories for the future. So you have to know why you're writing. You have to write like nobody's looking over your shoulder, and you have to tell the truth. I think that is the key. If you are naked in the text, and as honest as you can be in the text, then your reader is far more likely to connect in a visceral way with what you have to share. So I think writing in general has to adhere to that. Any ideas on what's next?
What's next? Somebody just, if I had a quarter, folk who've asked me that over the past few days. I'm fascinated by the story of Dr. Barbara Ball. I remember just walking and asking people, you know, that very question, who should I write about next? They're like, write about, you know, the white woman who used to walk around Court Street with her gi on and the dogs, right? So just, I'm like, and this is the woman who, you know, used the martial arts to put a beat down on those cops. That is one hell of a story. It's always curiosity. I'm like, why would this white woman who had privilege spread at her feet because of the color of her skin, why would she align with the most underprivileged? And so consistently, why would she do that? Why would she essentially give up much of her white skin privilege? Right? So again, it comes back and looking at Dr. Barbara Ball and somebody like Paul, it comes down to principle. When principle trumps all else, any suffering that you incur is neither here nor there. Right? Dr. Ball was one. I'm also fascinated by the story of the Black Beret cadre. I'm really, really fascinated with that. I've had the opportunity to hear some stories told, and it's jaw-dropping. You know, and again, we jumped from basically 1959 to and we're in the 21st century. But there's all of that history. What happened in the 70s? You know, where did the Black Beret cadre come from? Who were members? What was their overall aim and intent? I've been able to see some of their papers, for example, and the liberation school that they had established. It's powerful stuff, and it's missing from the pages of the history books, Bermuda history books. So that would be a story as well. And I'm also interested in the story of Mary Prince. She, of all the others, is the most well-known, but I think there's still a larger context within which her personal story can be placed. And lastly, Muzumbo, Dr. Edward Fitzgerald Gordon, E.F. Gordon. I think that's a powerful, you know, so there's, I could go on and on, but Adiwell Simmons, you know, the man who shut the island down in 1981. You know, what was it about this man? What was it that again, inspired him to do what he did? I'm driven by curiosity. I was like, well, why you do that? Why that happen? I want to know the answers to these questions, right? So that gives me the impetus to go digging, you know, getting very nosy and asking uncomfortable questions because I really want to know. Because I know my readers will want to know, why do you do that? Why did Barbara Ball not just turn the other cheek? Why did she just turn that brother over her shoulder and onto the bare concrete? Why did she do that? She's a white woman. She could have got away and just, you know, she didn't. So I'm curious as to what motivated these Bermudians to do what they did. So I'm driven by curiosity. The stories are endless.
One last question. What's your perception on the future of libraries?
Of libraries?
Yes.
Necessary. You know, I'm still from the old school, I suppose, so I need to feel a book. Kindle's all right. Kindle's cool. Not dogging out Kindle. But there's something about touching a book and turning the pages and being able to put lines in and your own personal notations that I feel is a necessary part of the reading, of the full reading experience. So libraries will always have a part to play in that. People, I don't think, will ever get to a point where they're like, you know what, let's just do everything electronically and let's do away with books completely. I don't think that'll happen.
Thank you, Ms. White.
Thank you.